Okay, welcome to Talking Shop. Marisa Tellez. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I didn't want to look like that much of a fool at the start. Like, oh my God, did I get your name wrong? Which I've infamously gotten a few names wrong, but hopefully that won't happen. And I'm glad today was day where I didn't get that wrong.
No, it's fine.
Awesome.
But a lot of people will mutilate it, but you didn't, so you're good.
Okay, good. So, my sloth speed pace of learning about languages, I guess, is paying off. Um, so welcome to Talking Shop, and today we're going to talk about your specialty in crocodiles. So I used to think that alligators and crocodiles were these big, scary creatures that you should not go near. Kind of how I treat like all wildlife. Even though up here in Maine we have like deer and once in a while you might find a bear or a moose, and most of the time they'll just get scared off. Um,
Yeah.
if you don't believe me, there's plenty of videos out there on the internet of security cameras where a cat chases a bear out of someone's yard.
Yeah.
And so I talked last time with Alligator Rob, and he explained to me how alligators are not that scary. And then he mentioned, crocodiles. There might be two kinds that are man eaters, and mentioned to me I should contact you about talking about these majestic creatures. Um, so Phil, so let's get started with you and your background and what made you so interested in making this your focus, your expertise.
Yeah. So I am originally from Los Angeles, California. So I grew up in the concrete jungle. And I mean, if you look at my family background, we've always, on my mom's side, there were some farmers. And then on my dad's side, they are of Innu descent, better known as Apache. And that comes from a line of healers, so very much connected to the natural world. And so it was just I was just born loving nature, wanting to be connected with nature, loving animals. And at a very, very young age, I fell in love with apex predators. And I do blame my father. I always tell people this story. I blame my father because when I was 5, it was my birthday, it was Christmas. I can't remember, but I remember it was a day where I would get presents and I wanted a My Little Pony or a Barbie doll or something like that. And my dad instead gave me just a rectangular stack. And, I was like, what is that? That's obviously not a My Little Pony. And it was 3 books. And one of those books was about sharks. And I fell in love with sharks. I would say about 7 years old, I could tell you every shark species. I knew about at that point that their endangered status, whether they were critically endangered, whether they were considered vulnerable. At 7 years old, so the international organization that identifies or gives the status of animals in regards of are they critically endangered or are they, they're safe per se. You know what I mean? They're not near extinction. That organization is called the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN. At 7 years old, I knew what the IUCN was because of all these things I was reading about sharks. And what I found out was that majority of sharks were considered endangered or critically endangered of going to extinction. That led me to read up more about other predators, bears, jaguars, lions, snakes, crocodiles, alligators, and I felt really bad for these animals because when you when I began reading about them and doing research about them, a lot of these animals were critically endangered or near extinction just because people are killing them out of fear. And I, as a young girl, could not understand why you could hate something or just want to kill something when it hasn't done anything to you. And in reality, you don't know a lot about it. I could not fathom, why people are scared of snakes when they really haven't even seen a snake before, or they just automatically think a snake is going to strike and bite them when it's the first time you've seen the snake. Like I could not understand the how people were so afraid of these animals when they truly didn't have the education about them. And at 8 years old, I knew that's when I decided I want to be an advocate for apex predators. At that time, particularly sharks. And I thought I was going to be a marine biologist. I was planning to one day go free diving with the great white sharks in South Africa. And I was 15 years old, and some girls came by my locker at high school. Everyone knew I wanted to be the crazy wildlife biologist. And someone came up to me and they were like, Marissa, there's this crazy Australian guy and he's jumping on crocodiles and he's telling everyone how, like, about saving them and this and that. And they're like, you have to watch his show. And finally, I got to watch a show with Steve Irwin, and his love, his passion just transcended into me. I was like, yep, that's it. I'm going to be working with crocodiles. I mean, it was just almost instantaneous. I was like, these are the animals I'm going to work with and protect. I'm going to be the voice for these animals. And so I went to University of California, Santa Barbara for college, and I double majored. I double majored in zoology, and I also got a degree in cultural anthropology, particularly studying Native American heritage. But in saying that, it was because I was so interested in the connection or the cultural connection between people and wildlife, because I had felt, from 8 years old to like my early 20s, I was already seeing a pattern how people were so disassociated with nature, but yet you still had these communities internationally that were very much intertwined and involved with nature, that they are coexisting with various animals, even crocodiles. And so, what can we learn from them to further coexistence and more modern communities or cities and all that kind of stuff? And so from there, I worked at a wildlife sanctuary, and then I worked at the LA Zoo, and then I finally got into grad school and I got my master's and my PhD studying alligators. And it was also during this time that I was coming to Belize to do some side studies on the crocodiles in Belize. And in 2014, when I was getting my PhD, the government of Belize invited me to start a nonprofit or work in Belize, as at that time, the human population in Belize was growing as well as the crocodile population. And they thought, with my background and expertise, and at that point too, already working with various communities, that we may be able to mitigate any negative interactions between crocodiles and communities. And here we are now. I established my nonprofit, the Crocodile Research Coalition, in 2016. So 10 years later, here we are. We actually just had a crocodile attack last week. That was the first one in 3 or 4 years. I mean, croc attacks are super, super rare here. And part of that is that crocodiles still have a lot of their habitat here. So, and they don't want to be around humans. So, but the attacks that have happened, the problem isn't the bad behavior of crocodiles, it's the bad behavior of humans. People feeding the crocodiles. I mean, there was one guy that got bit. Him and his friend were drunk and decided to jump off a boat and try to wrangle a crocodile. I mean, I'm sorry. I have no sympathy for these guys. And what happened last week, what was so amazing, and I got a lot of messages from colleagues and from community members, is this woman at 4 o'clock in the morning decided to go swimming in crocodile habitat. And it's nesting season. Mama's protective. We also found out that there's some feeding going on in that area. and the crocodile attacked the woman. She luckily got away, a few injuries on her arm, but overall she's fine, she's stable. But 90%, and a lot of people are saying this, 90% of the comments were all, what was the woman thinking? What is she doing swimming amongst crocodiles at 4 o'clock in the morning? No one was saying go kill the crocodile, it's the crocodile's fault or anything. And if anything, it was just a testament of how important education is and in really squashing those misguided beliefs and those false facts about these animals and educating people. And I think that's another thing is that my organization, along with Forest Department and a couple of other wildlife organizations here, we have been pushing wildlife education when it comes to coexistence. And we are now seeing the positive benefits of it. Because as I mentioned, you rarely hear about snake bites anymore. You don't, croc attacks or just any issues with crocs now. It really doesn't happen. Um, our our issues with wildlife are decreasing, and it's because of education with the communities.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Um, that is pretty funny actually. Almost like even where I live, what happens with wild animals when things go nasty? Somebody's drunk, somebody's being stupid, somebody
Yeah,
wanders off somewhere where they're not supposed to. And what's the
exactly.
end result? They end up getting themselves hurt or they end up, as mentioned very embarrassingly in a news article one day.
Yes. And I unfortunately this woman, I know for the next couple of weeks, she's probably going to want to hang her head low for embarrassment because like I said, 90% of the population here is like, what were you doing?
Yeah.
And it's actually probably more than that, but the comments were, it was 15 years ago when I was working here, everyone would have been like, go kill the croc. And nobody, like, no one was really negative towards the animal. They were negative towards the human. And that to me is so uplifting that people are starting to understand that a lot of our issues with wildlife stem from our stupidity or our lack of knowledge slash education.
Yeah. So let's get started, or now next to. So, what is your organization for people at home who might want to learn more?
So our organization, the Crocodile Research Coalition, we are based in Southern Belize, and our mission is to promote the conservation, the education, and research of crocodiles, their habitat, as well as adjacent wildlife, because for us, it's more than just crocodiles. As I like to say, is that we can't just protect crocodiles and their habitat gets destroyed. Or maybe there's certain species interactions that we still don't know about, but then other species start disappearing. What was the purpose of our mission? So we have to protect everything within crocodile habitat. And we do that with our research and with our community involvement programs. And then, of course, education. Education is so big. I was trained as an academic, but as I've been more boots on the ground when it comes to conservation, I've realized it doesn't matter if I had $1 million grant to do research and to analyze tissue samples for genetics and toxins and all that kind of stuff. If the community is not involved, if the community does not care, if the community doesn't know the proper facts, millions and millions of dollars will never make a difference. The difference, if we want long-term conservation, the community has to be involved. They have to understand that they are the true stewards of the environment.
Well said. Well said. So before we get to the all stars, uh, I, I'll probably sound really dumb saying this. What about understanding their habitat, and what about the protection of crocodiles' habitat is really important?
Yeah, protecting habitat actually prevents human crocodile conflict. And I can see this right now. In Florida with alligators, when there's conflict, it's usually because humans are encroaching into their habitat. We're not giving them enough habitat to give them their space. Here in Belize, this would have been about 15 years ago. I noticed that there was a lot of overdevelopment happening in the northern part of Belize, and they're just cutting down mangrove. They're utilizing trash as landfill. And I remember telling people, if this does not slow down, I get it, development has to happen, but we need to do it sustainably that benefits nature and communities. If we don't do that, I guarantee you're going to start seeing an increase of dogs going missing or pets going missing, human crocodile conflict, and that's exactly what happened. Because when you take down the mangroves are Mother Nature's nursery for so many different animals, aquatic and terrestrial. And so now, for example, no more mangroves means no more fish. These animals need to eat. So guess what they're going to start going after? Now they've got to change their diet and most likely are going to start going over the pets that are getting too close to the lagoon edge or something like that. Also is the pollution of water. This can make the animals very sick. So they're too slow to get their normal prey. So again, they start going after people's pets. They come into um, a closer, they get closer with humans. And that's when an attack can happen as well. And the thing is also is that if we don't protect habitat, it's not just devastating for the crocodiles, but it's devastating for the communities that depend on the habitat for their livelihoods, such as the fisher folk. Also, people that utilize the habitat for tours. So that's something else to keep in mind is that, it's not, and that's one thing the pros and cons for many countries of Central America and the Caribbean is that our major income is based off of tourism. And, we all got people are still recovering from COVID. I know businesses, they still cannot hire employees back full time. I mean, we are still recovering from COVID, the financial loss of it all. But in regards of that, the one thing with the tourism is that because it is the bread and butter, people here tend to want to protect habitat more because by protecting habitat, it's protecting the wildlife that people want to come see. It's also protecting their income as well.
All right. Makes sense. Um, yeah, I mean it's important to have that healthy balance. There's a few developers up north here, which I wish would learn that lesson. Uh, Now you mentioned mangroves, and so for people that might not know what those are, what are those in terms of the ecological balance?
Mangroves are a type of tree and they create a forest per se. It's you see a lot of mangroves on the coast in the Caribbean or even a further inland, sometimes along the rivers. And the mangroves, they give a lot of life. I had mentioned earlier, they are Mother Nature's nursery. A lot of the roots are used for areas for fish spawning as well as lobster reproduction. A lot of birds as well as other animals will utilize the canopy again, for making nests and for roosting. A lot of juvenile aquatic animals will utilize the mangroves to hide from bigger predators. And then also with the mangroves, they are Mother Nature's water filter. They assist in creating fresh water, but they also are known to be able to, in a sense, suck up pollutants that are in the water, keeping the water quality at a higher level. So they're really important. And the thing is, unfortunately, when a lot of people come down here, they want to cut down mangroves, whether they're coming down to Central America or the Caribbean to live or for investment. And that goes back to, this is why I love history per se, because if we want to know why we are where we are in conservation, we have to understand the past, because by understanding the past, we get to know where we are presently, and then we know how to take the most appropriate steps forward. And one thing is people think of the Caribbean as palm trees and these beautiful white sandy beaches. That is based off Hollywood And when you see these movies that are like, oh, we're in the Caribbean and, we're on these beaches with palm trees, guess what? That was filmed in Southeast Asia. That was not the Caribbean. Because when you come to the Caribbean to and see our natural beaches, our natural habitat, sure, we've got some beach. It's beautiful, but it's lined with mangroves. It's lined with literal forest. It's not palm trees. Palm trees here actually cause beach erosion and causes you. And so I crack up when these people come down and move here, or, again, or resorts, and they cut down the little forest, they cut down the mangroves, and they're like, Marissa, what happened to all the wildlife? Our beach won't stop eroding. And it's like, it's because you cut down the native forest or the native vegetation and put something foreign, and now it's causing all this havoc, And there's, again, this goes back to developing sustainably. I get it. You want your resorts to have these nice beaches or whatever, but you can still leave some fringe forest to help maintain beaches and to help the mangroves and the literal forest do their job. So, I mean, the mangroves are very, very important. But again, if you watch movies, everyone, and it's lovely white sandy beaches and they're saying they're, vacationing in Costa Rica or something, it's likely Thailand. It's likely Thailand. Do your homework. So,
Ugh, I'm trying not to laugh out loud that much, but
it's like it's so funny because people watch the movies and legitimately are like, oh, this is factual. There's something subconsciously that it's like, oh, it has to be factual. And it's like, no, it's not, like Jurassic Park, for example, that was supposed to be an island off of Costa Rica. That was Hawaii. That was Kauai, not even close to Costa Rica. There's a job out there in which you get hired to travel around the world to look for places for movies, but they might say that they're filming in Arizona, but it's actually going to be like in the Sahara or something, so it's just like you can't.
yeah,
And it's similar for crocodiles. I've watched Lake Placid, and it's like Betty White was feeding a 30-foot crocodile, I believe, that was in Maine, now that I think about it. And it's
yeah.
like crocodiles don't get to 30 feet and they would not survive in Maine, you know?
Plain and
But
simple.
it's Anaconda. People are afraid of anacondas because of the movie with Jennifer Lopez. And it's like, snakes on a plane. It's like snakes would not do that on a plane, everyone. They're movies. It's movies. But I don't know why people think a movie is fiction. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very interesting.
there's a reason why it's called the entertainment industry,
Oh
but
yeah, no, yeah, yeah.
I get what you mean. It was very frustrating for me to try and talk to people about when I was working for some bigger companies, that I would try and be like, no, we should actually do some research and this would look unique. They'd go, no, I want this instead. And they'd pull something up from another movie, and it's like, okay, I get it. That looks really nice, but we could do something different. And they're like, no, this
Yeah,
is what I want. Um, so yeah, I have a shared frustration over that.
yeah,
And outside of our frustrations of habitats and the way that's presented and people not doing their homework before they travel somewhere, um, uh, so let's get to the all stars of this interview. So the crocodiles themselves. Um, is there a reason for their name? How can you specifically identify them from alligators? Um, but are they, like how much do they dislike people? Do they run away? Are they man eaters? Like, let's fill me in on this.
Crocodilus is the scientific name of the genre of of crocodiles, and it means pebble lizard. And it's mainly because on the back of a crocodile, you see these ridges. And so back then it looked like it looks like pebbles on a lizard's back. So there are right now, scientists are kind of going back and forth, but there's about 26 to 28 species of crocodilians in the world. And as Alligator Rob mentioned, there's two, people say two or three man eaters. Those three that I would identify are your Indo-Pacific crocodile, better known as the Australian crocodile or the saltwater crocodile. That is the largest reptile in the world. It gets to be about 23 feet. Then you have the Nile crocodile, and then you have your mugger crocodile that you can find in Sri Lanka and India. Those are considered man-eaters in the sense of they look at humans and they see prey. Now, in saying that, there are populations of Nile crocodiles that coexist with villages. And there's a really good documentation of I can't remember what country it's in. I want to say Kenya, but I don't quote me on that. But there are photos, there are videos of these large, massive crocodiles come in the water, and you see kids just running up to them, petting them, and you're like, what? But you throughout the Nile crocodile range, I mean, there are records of villages where there's no attacks. It just doesn't happen, even though that's a man-eating species. Unfortunately, for the Indo-Pacific, anywhere you find, they're attacking you. That one's definitely a man-eater. And then the mugger crocodile, again, I do know in India, there is a temple there where, I mean, people will wade through the water amongst these mugger crocodiles and they could care less, you know? So it's like the Nile crocodile and the mugger crocodile, it depends on the populations, whereas the Indo-Pacific is absolutely man-eater all around, all around. And but all the other species, so let's say those were the three species out of 28 crocodilian species in the world that are man-eaters. So you have 25 other species of crocodilians. And when I say crocodilians, that includes the crocodiles, the gharial, the caiman, and the alligator. All the other species have evolved to eat crustacean, eat fish, eat small mammal. Yes, ever so often you might get a very large American crocodile or an American alligator that takes down a deer or a wild hog. Yes, that does happen. But overall, even the very large species like the Orinoco or the American crocodile, they prefer fish. That's what they evolved with. And I can at least say when it comes to the Americas, especially Central America, the Caribbean, and South America, most likely why these animals evolved to prefer fish is because of the reef, because of the mangroves. Again, the mangroves, and then you have the reef that we have where they are a place for fish spawning as well. It's like, well, why do I have to go after a human or a very large mammal where I might get killed or I might get seriously injured when I can just eat a little chumpy fish? You know, that's a little bit easier. So with that, there's no, like, why would they have to evolve a very aggressive behavior? Because they don't need all that testosterone, all that hormone to really rev them up to go after something that is very large prey. Whereas with the Indo-Pacific and the Nile crocodile, they need that aggression because they need that boldness to be able to take down a human or a zebra. On our side of the fence, why? There's no need. And this is why with American alligators and American crocodiles and caiman in our region of North and South America, they are fairly timid and shy because they never even there's no need for evolving aggression per se. And that is another reason why attacks with our species in the New World, it's very, very rare because they want to stay away from humans. They're timid and shy. And what I can say with the American crocodile and the Morlet's crocodile, their demeanor was recognized by the ancient Mesoamerican societies, going back to the Olmecs, the Toltecs, the Zoltecs, the Maya, and the Aztecs. Or the Mexica, is that they understood that their demeanors were kind of, oh, they're not that scary. And this is why they were around temples and villages because they were easy to take care of and there was not necessarily a fear that they were going to get attacked because these animals don't see human as prey. They see us as predator.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Um, so I makes a lot more sense as to why there truly aren't a lot of attacks, and most likely they're not going to attack you, or there's I guess kind of a way to not instigate any
Yeah.
tension. So now, another question. If, let's just say, for whatever reason, I go to Belize one day, I'm walking somewhere because I want to go look at a mangrove, um, and one of these big pebble skin lizards decides to just come right out of the water, and now I'm within, I don't know, 10 feet or less from it. Um, what should I do so I don't get attacked or make him feel as though I'm a threat?
Yeah. So here in Belize, if a crocodile jumped out of the water while you were walking, first off, you need to be really mad because most likely someone was feeding that animal in that area. And it just thought it was feeding time. So again, not necessarily the bad behavior of the crocodile, but the bad behavior of a human in that area. If you are a bit far away from it, all you got to do is walk away. These animals, if it's about 10 feet away from you, it's not gonna come running after you. There's a myth of a crocodile is chasing you, run zigzag, run 5 feet. These animals aren't made for running after humans. It's you just need to like really just walk away. The other thing is with animal behavior, if the moment you turn your back, you are illustrating submission, and that animal doesn't feel very threatened. And it's like, oh, I won. Okay. And so it's easy enough just to walk away.
All right, now I'm gonna probably sound even dumber asking this question, but what about feeding? Like, why is feeding these creatures, or even other behaviors such a bad thing to be doing?
So feeding crocodiles or any wildlife, it habituates the animals to humans. Most animals have a fear of humans. They see us as the main predator. But when we start feeding them, they start losing their fear and they become habituated. They start noticing a pattern. Well, when this person comes to the water's edge, I'm going to get food. I'm going to get food. Oh, now they're bringing other people. So whenever people are coming to the edge of the water, I'm going to get food. And so this can cause attacks because an alligator or a crocodile might just see someone approaching and just automatically think I'm getting fed, and then that's when an attack can happen. And one of the most famous attacks in which feeding caused the death of an innocent bystander was the one at Disneyland several years ago. Found out, and there was like one or two newspapers that reported the truth, but there were a group of locals that kept going to that area to feed the alligators. And the one day that they didn't come by, the little kid went by the water. And, the alligator was underneath and just saw and just grabbed the kid. And unfortunately, the kid passed away because people were feeding alligators.
That is unfortunate, though, that that child did pass because of that.
Yeah.
So, for
And you hear about it. And I mentioned how last week a woman was attacked in Belize, and coming to find out, people are feeding at directly and indirectly the wildlife there, and someone got hurt for it. But thankfully, there are enough educated people in Belize that realize this was not the fault of the crocodile, but the fault of the person and maybe other people prior to that woman going into the water, because again, someone had been feeding and habituating those crocodiles.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, hopefully, with more education, less people will be feeding, and there'll be
Yes.
less biting and less attacks. Um, so you also brought up nesting season. So are there times of the year not to go near these animals? And what might those reasons be, aside from maybe the obvious, like mama's laying eggs and don't go near the kids?
Yeah, so I the research that we do here, knowing that these animals are a bit more timid and shy, like we'll go in the water with them. We're kayaking, trying to capture them, all that stuff. But I can say during mating season and nesting season, I am not as bold as I can be in my research. And that is because during mating season and during nesting season, the testosterone of both males and females are elevated, so they're more aggressive and they're more bold. And when you look at the croc attacks around the world, most croc attacks happen during the mating and the nesting season. And that's also with the mating and nesting season, it usually is timed with weather getting warmer. So these are reptiles. Their activity is going to be dependent on the temperature of the environment. So it's warmer, thus they're more mobile. And then you've got the testosterone happening, and that is when attacks can happen.
Okay. And so this will be during the summertime, a certain point in the summertime.
It really depends on where you are at in the world. For us, it is going to be around the March, April month is when it starts getting warmer and when we really start kind of revving up into that mating season and nesting season. In the US, if I remember speaking from with alligator, Rob, is it seems to happen more come like May and June.
May and June. Okay. That's also the kickoff of tourist season. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so aside from all of that, thank you, Dr. Tellez. Is there anything you would like to say or share that I might have missed to help conclude this interview?
I would just like to put it out there for your interviewers that if they or your guests, everyone that's listening, is that if you want to learn more about crocodiles and education and just some fun facts, to follow the Crocodile Research Coalition. We're always awesome, more than happy to answer any questions. For any parents out there, we do receive requests from young students who have to do reports, and we are happy to help out with that as well. And yeah, we're always happy just to help people and sinking their teeth into conservation.
All right, and where can people best get a hold of you for any sort of questions?
They can head to our website, which is simply www. I think those were three W's I just said, crocodileresearchcoalition.org.
All right. Well, thank you again for taking the time, Doc. It's been fun. I now know that crocodiles are not as scary as I thought they were. And
No.
yeah, so I go to Belize. Well, I know as long as I keep my distance, those big boys and gals will probably not bother me at all, which will be
Yeah, you
nice.
probably wouldn't even know they're in the water.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, of course.